G'day ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags and welcome aboard the F-82 Twin Mustang. Now this plane is one of those aircraft that, it's like a train wreck. It's horrifically bad, but for some reason you can't stop looking at it. Now this video was done over the course of my first 10 free repairs. In that time I managed 4 air-to-air kills. I only survived 2 battles. And yet I consistently managed to put this thing in the top 3 to 5 on my team. It was baffling. As an air-to-air fighter, it's horrific. It struggles to maintain 350 kilometers an hour. It can't bust 500 in a dive in a tier where other aircraft are diving at 800. It will get into battles with jets on a regular basis. Its flight and damage models do not respond correctly, meaning it leads to strange flight characteristics when damaged. It has almost no elevator control whatsoever. Its turning circle, even under combat flaps, if you flick it over onto a 90 degree, full stand on the elevators, is equivalent to that of a B-17. I actually did a small time test for amusement's sake on it, and a Wellington turns better than this thing. So how did I keep getting in the top 3 to 5? Well, I used it as a ground attacker. Its centerline 6 50 caliber machine guns are very accurate for ground strafing, and why it's still horrifically bad at low altitudes. At least you can pop ground targets with a lot of reliability. Of course, it doesn't help the aircraft that it's just horrifically ugly. I mean, just look at it. It's horrible. Now the damage model in the aircraft, it has pretty much no ability to absorb any shots and retain flight. All the components on it seem to be too large. The hitboxes for the internal componentry seem to be too large for the airframe. The actual hitbox from the elevators is actually the entire size of the back end of the aircraft. Any time that the elevators take a direct hit, the rudders will also take a direct hit, taking out the entire rear control surface array in one shot. Now, due to its inability to maneuver, every air kill I managed to achieve in this aircraft was done this way. Just go nose to nose and pull the trigger. All the shots go straight down the center and you rip your enemy's aircraft in half from the front. Of course, the enemy team isn't about to let an F-82 get away with killing one of their teammates. No matter how hard you try and run, no matter how long you try and run for, the enemy team will always catch you and punish you for it. So yes, as I said, survival rating in this aircraft was about 10% at best. Now, the rumours that the Twin Mustang only operates on one engine, well, it's not entirely true. They aren't balanced, however. The right engine is the engine that is developing all the power to make the aircraft go, and as you can see, I've just taken a critical hit to the right engine. The left engine is developing power, but only about 5 to 10% of what it should be. You'll notice I still have an engine running here, but if you look at my airspeed and then my rate of descent with the right engine out, it looks awfully like what an aircraft that's just lost an engine at low altitude trying to glide would look like. Until I hit just sub 250 kilometers an hour. Hitting around here at about 220, and the speed balances out. The engine on the left hand side nacelle has just enough horsepower to be able to maintain this speed, but it can't maintain altitude. It's keeping it slightly more reliable than a glide. That's it. Interesting thing to note, I've never seen a fire start on the left hand side of the aircraft, only the right. So earlier on I mentioned odd handling characteristics when the aircraft takes damage, specifically around the rudder. Well, here's a couple of examples for it. I'm just strafing down ground targets and I take a hit that takes out the elevator, and you can see that shot hit the center of the elevator and it blew both rudders and the elevator array as well. Plane immediately pitches upward. Not something that's terribly unusual for aircraft to do when their rudders are taken out. What is a little more unusual is when they start doing this. Now, You can see I'm holding the mouse cursor at the moment in the horizontal axis of the aircraft only. I am also not touching any keyboard binds minus the roll left and right trying to steer this plane. Now I'm going to speed this up here so you can watch it over time, but yeah, the flight model and damage model are not operating correctly with one another. Now I managed to keep this aircraft up until the rest of the enemy team went down, so this was one of the 2 matches I survived. And you can see how hard the plane is just rocking around. The flight model and damage model are just not working with one another. The interesting part with what you're seeing here is minus the odd touch left and right on my roll keys just to keep the plane stable, I don't touch the mouse or any other keyboard binds for the entirety of this flight. The plane maintains around 270 kilometers an hour the whole way back. It maintains roughly the same altitude. The plane is actually flying even in this state. This is how bad the flight and damage models are actually working on this aircraft. Why it's flicking around like this, you can maintain stable flight. Now, just in case somebody thinks it was some kind of fluke, here it is again. This is what happens every single time the rudder array takes damage. Exactly the same handling characteristics going all over again. I don't survive this one. I actually make it all the way back to the runway and try and land it, and that works about as well as you would expect. Now, all the damage you see here was caused by a single impact to the elevator, which of course took out the rudders and the fuselage at the same time. Once again, I use A and D to roll the aircraft into position. I'm using minor mouse controls just to try and get the plane stable, and then I take hands off and go to just watch the show without touching the keyboard at all. As you can see, I'm falling back into the 270 to 300 kilometer an hour mark where I was flying at before. A couple of rolls just to get it stable. Now I think I've got it sorted out. Now I'm going to speed up the video here again just so you can watch the path all the way back to the runway. Sometimes you just have to marvel at how bad a flight model can be added into this game. It boggles the mind exactly how this could slip past testing. Well, in a way it doesn't boggle my mind at all. I was on the test server when this plane was added into the game. Anyone who did not have the Mustang's research was unable to even test fly it, and that was really the only way that the plane could be used on the test server, was in test flights. The only way to actually unlock it and test it in actual combat conditions to see exactly how its flight model would actually work would have been to grind out the prerequisite 200,000 RP or 180,000 RP, whatever it is to actually unlock this thing now. I've forgotten, it's been that long since I unlocked it. But unlock the prerequisite RP in order to make the aircraft available for testing. Of course, that means you've got to unlock the aircraft on the test server. Once the patch goes onto the live server, the aircraft is still locked, so you have to re-unlock the aircraft a second time. Nobody's willing to spend the time to actually unlock an aircraft for flight testing on the test server, and the only other way to bypass trying to grind in the space of the few hours the test server might be up and available to test this aircraft around 180,000 RP is to spend gold in order to unlock it. That's why this plane was never tested, because Gaijin is not allowing aircraft to be tested when they're added to the test server. It's part of the reason why I didn't bother jumping on the last one. I suppose if you keep that in mind, you may as well consider the state of the flight model to be quite deliberate. I'm playing back and forth, trying to drop enough altitude and airspeed here to actually get to the point where I might be able to belly flop it onto the runway for a landing and some kind of repair, but yeah, that was never going to work. So, it's time for the best match I ever had in this machine. And I warn you in advance, why this was a first place match, it wasn't much of a battle. Now I'm flying out in this battle with Yaminu, Grievous, and Captain 544. The rest of my wingmen are pretty much flying straight up Mustangs. I am going to dive the F-82 down towards the landing craft on the right hand side of the Twin Islands. This is actually probably the best map for the Twin Mustang if you really want to get this thing going and try and get a good score. The entire match can be won simply by eliminating all the landing craft in 2 points on the map. If people leave you alone long enough to do it, you will win the match and you will whack up a massive score for completing mission objectives. Now you see I'm 20 k's out of the landing craft, and this is going to be a long and boring flight all the way there. An interesting thing I did note with the Twin Mustang though while flying it, I did only play my 10 free repair matches in the aircraft. However, I managed to unlock almost the first 4 modifications for the aircraft. I got the airframe, the compressor, the ammunition belts for the 50 caliber machine guns, and I'm 200 or 300 RP short of unlocking the 500 pound bomb for it as well. This is one of the few Era 4 aircraft that I can think of that I ever managed to unlock all the tier 1 upgrades, or almost all the tier 1 upgrades, within the 10 free repairs that you're given when you first get the aircraft. The actual time it took to unlock them all and the RP requirements are incredibly low for the upgrades. Of course, upgrades won't fix a broken flight model, broken damage models, broken engine management, bad handling overall. It's not going to make much of a difference, but it was interesting that they were so cheap and so easy to unlock. Now the Japanese always climb hard and fast right from the start of the match, so I'm trying to bring this thing's belly down onto the water very slowly. I don't want to get too close. As I said earlier, its elevation control is god awful, and you'll see that in a moment. Full standing on the elevator, it will barely pull out of level flight. So it's important that I leave a safety buffer in order to be able to pull up, but at the same time I'm trying to get low enough that those rapidly climbing Japanese fighters won't actually be able to get a red box on me while I'm at such a low altitude. This should buy me the time I need to be able to take out, or at least this entire bank of landing craft, and begin to move on to the next set. Now, why pretty much everything else about this aircraft is absolutely horridly bad, the guns are not. The guns are very good. One of the very few things I can actually give a positive for the design, due to the twin nature of the airframe, nothing gets in the way of your shots when you're zoomed in, taking shots at targets. Although I would not like to try and fly this thing in sim battle and get those guns on target flying offside. It'd be like trying to line up an enemy and shoot the enemy down using only the guns in one wing. Bring the nose around for the second pass. Let's try and see if I can get a few more of them this time. Now that's full stand on the elevator to pull up there. That's as hard as it pulls out. Now that's the first block of the south landing craft eliminated. I'm moving on the second block now. And it shows how slow this thing is. Weps off, I'm in level flight. It's a twin Mustang. This is the last piston-driven aircraft in the line before you unlock the P-80 jet. And it's doing 380. Wildcats are almost faster than this thing. They're certainly more manoeuvrable. Another collection of landing craft destroyed. Exiting back out of the area. Put it on its wingtip, and I'm full standing on the elevator again, trying to turn as fast as I can. Combat flaps are deployed. That is the maximum turn rate you can get out of the twin Mustang. Turn back on target. 3 landing craft remaining. 1, 2. Not quite enough angle to get that one. That's alright, I'll just loop it back around, eliminate it, and that will be the south side landing craft dealt with, and I'll move for the north. I'm watching all the real fight happen in the sky off in the distance, knowing this thing cannot enter that area, it would just get itself killed. Line up the last landing craft. And nice easy kill. Okay, time to head out of the area and go get the north landing craft and secure the map. And if you look at the ticket counter, that's why this map is ideal for this kind of an aircraft. The landing craft are worth so much in the way of tickets, you can actually be useful for your team. Well, almost. Occasionally destroyers will just say no. So, the results for the match. Well, first place for the team, with 10 landing craft eliminated. I got an X5 multi-strike award, an X6 water wind streak award, the best squad award, which we actually got a lot the entire time flying through the night, anti-mech and a 1500 battle trophy, 18,828 silver lions and 1,729 research points. On a premium account, no double, obviously. And yes, that was the only first place I ever managed to achieve in this aircraft. I usually manage to keep it in the top 5 nearly every time on ground attack missions. The one time I tried to use it as an anti-air fighter, I was bottom of the charts. I got eliminated the second I got into a dogfight. There was just no way this thing was capable of turning or combating other aircraft of any kind. In terms of air-to-air combat capability, there are aircraft in Era 2 that have higher performance, faster climb rates, better handling and overall better speed than this machine, and have equivalent amounts of firepower. While I do know the twin Mustang was a late war design, and it did see service in Korea, its position in the queue is ridiculous. This aircraft is never going to be a machine that people are going to really want to fly. This is going to be a machine that they skip past in order to get access to jets. Its flight model in its current state is laughable. It's so bad. It has to be deliberate. Somebody at Gaijin had to look at this and go, yep, this is horrible. Let's tune it up and make it a little bit worse, and we'll put it on there as a bit of a joke. There's just so many issues with how the flight model, the damage model talk to one another, the issues with the engines. These are things that I just don't know how they could have missed even before this thing was put on a live public access test server. I'm assuming these aircraft do go through a testing process before they reach that public access test server, and I really cannot fathom how somebody could have tested this machine and not seen these problems. It just makes no sense to me. This aircraft is without a doubt the worst condition flight model currently available in War Thunder, and it needs to be fixed. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this video. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.